Thursday Ask the Mayor program with usually Mayor Bob Morgan, but today we have in with us City Engineer James Burroughs. James, thanks for coming in again.
You bet. Thank you.
Engineering department this time of year, we think of this as the dead of winter, although the weather lately has been pretty good, but what kind of goes on these times of year for you? And are you kind of planning for what the whole year will look like, or imagine there's other things to do too?
Yeah, this is really our time that we're in the office doing our design work for the projects that we're expecting for 2024. You know, pretty much our construction season is in the summertime, and then when fall hits, we're working with all the departments and trying to determine, okay, what projects we have for next year and what we need to start working on. So, of course, my surveyor really appreciates getting out in the fall and getting that work done, you know, instead of waiting until winter when we had minus 30 below temperatures. But we try to get all our surveying done in the fall, and then we're pretty much in the office designing that work and getting ready and trying to get them out for bids and looking at budgets and seeing where we're lining up for the coming year in 2024.
Most times the construction season for big projects starts, what, March, April, or what would you say?
Well, you know, with big projects anymore, and that's what's kind of hard with budgets, is they could span in a year or two, you know. But so, you know, most of the contractors, yes, just like us, they're trying to gear up for the next year during the winter time. So we're trying to get those bids out in the winter time before they get stacked up on their projects for the summer, because like anything else, if they already have those projects there and our project comes out to bid, well, they might bid it, but they're going to bid it really high to cover their losses in case they run behind on that project. So the sooner we can get them out, get those bids in, the better off we are, and the better off our bid results are.
At any one time, how many things would you say are out for bid awaiting prices or companies' response?
Oh, you know, it just really depends on the year. We were really aggressive this year. We got our armor coating and our asphalt ceiling bids out pretty early. But we, you know, it's always tough with our mill and overlays and concrete work trying to get those done, just with the amount of time we have. So, you know, we'll probably have 1 to 2, but it also depends on other departments. For example, I believe community development has some things out right now for demo work, I believe. So different departments, and even Mark Peathod might have something out for the public property. So, you know, with engineering, we might have 1 or 2 out at one time, but some of the other departments might have some things out for bid as well.
What's the big project that people would see this year? What's some of the things that are maybe on the horizon that they'll actually be able to see going on?
Sure. Probably the biggest two that will affect a lot of people. One is 13th Street, from Beaver to Oak, which is a concrete replacement project. That we actually bid that last year, but because everybody was so busy, we gave the contractors the opportunity to put what dates they could get in there to start, because again, that helps control our cost if we can work with the contractor. And so Team in Construction got that bid. I believe that we're trying to look at starting in April for that project, but we're going to try to have a public open house meeting, just because that project's going to take a lot of phasing to get people in and out. Some of those areas only have one way in and one way out, so we have to work with them to make sure that can happen. So phasing will be a big part of that project. So we're going to try to have that public open house and let people come in. Hopefully we'll have teammates there, and they can kind of talk about how they foresee this project going, and trying to work with the people, especially if there's any special needs that we have to be aware of to help someone get in and out of their property. So that's probably the big one that they'll see.
Yeah. Beaver Street on the east end of that, where it goes into the gravel up that hill there.
Right.
I've never actually kind of driven back there, but is that an access point or not that you could use on that?
That's going to stay gravel. It is a platted road through there, but there is no plans currently on the board for completing that section right now. Now, maybe in the future there might be, but right now there's not. So we're looking at pretty much just replacing the concrete that's there, getting the base reestablished from some of the settlement issues we've seen there, and hopefully get a little better riding pavement back in place.
Yeah, especially toward the bottom end of that block toward the north. It's really kind of chopped up in there.
And there's a lot of utilities that we're having to contend with. We would have really liked to add some more storm sewer inlets and things like that in there. But just with the current utility situation, it just really didn't lend itself to that. So we're going to try to improve some things where we can, but we're kind of stuck with what we have.
Yeah. The total amount, once that construction starts to when it ends, any kind of estimation about how long it would take, do you think?
The time frame, I think, and like I said, this project might take a little bit longer than normal because of the phasing. And what I mean by that is we actually have to wait for the concrete cure times to take place to get traffic shoved back over onto that concrete. So, you might see a piece of concrete poured, but we have to wait 7 to 10 days until it gets strength before we can shove people back onto that side. So due to the phasing of the project, it could take a little bit longer. So we're thinking, 60 to 90 days, I think, is the window that we allowed the contractor. But we're going to try to get people in and out the best we can.
That'll answer that public question about why aren't they doing anything out there at this moment? 'Cause
Exactly.
You often get that. You have gaps in the work where you have to slow down a little bit and then restart.
Yeah, where they see no one out there and wondering why no one's working out there on a nice sunny day. That sometimes is why. But
one thing about as far as to the country club area and out there residential, you'll still have the other street that goes on the south side. So.
And that was kind of brought up at a meeting yesterday at the board meeting that, we're going to try to put some message boards and things out there, to, because they're going to have some big events out there this coming summer with some of the golf tournaments. So we're going to try to direct the traffic the best we can with some of those message boards and tell them to take that other roadway around. Like I said, we're going to try to keep 13th open, maybe with some one-way sections along there, but if we can get traffic to turn ahead of that, that'll really help relieve some of that congestion. Yeah.
Any second or third biggest project for this year that's on the list?
Well, probably the biggest one in that we've been helping, but not doing the design work on. The biggest one is 33rd and Lincoln around the new Beatrice Elementary School. That'll probably be a really big one that will start this summer. And so we've been doing some support effort with some surveying and some of the utility work with the design engineer, which is JO. But we've been kind of going through that process with them, and that'll be a big project, of course.
The paving part of it, which would be on 33rd South, how far, if any distance, would you go down on that to improve that there?
So right now, the Lincoln Street improvement starts right at about 20, right by the Christ Community Church, right there. 26th Street, yeah, it starts there. Of course, goes east to the intersection of Lincoln and 33rd, and then it will go south on 33rd, probably to about where the cemetery drive entrance is. It'll extend to that location.
And there is an entrance to the school there, too. Or kind of
There's actually, so you will have 3 access points on Lincoln Street, and you will have 2 access points on 33rd Street.
I see.
Yeah. Some of those are one way in, one way out. Some of those are the one on 33rd will be in and out on that location.
When you have a single site like that, it's got to be kind of tricky planning for how the traffic's going to flow, isn't it? Out there?
It is, and that project will be done as a phased approach as well. Because construction this summer probably will leak over if things go forward with the school and starting to utilize the elementary school. The coming semester, so there'll be some phasing that we're going to have to work around so that they can make sure they can get into the school and out of the school and work around the construction side as well.
Okay. James Burroughs, City Engineer, our guest today on Ask the Mayor. We'll have more in a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor with City Engineer James Burroughs today on our program, kind of going back to where we were talking about big projects. We're focusing mainly on the street aspect of it, but water and electric, any big things there?
Well, in terms of water, we always try to look ahead and seeing what street projects are going to be done because we don't like to put in, let's say, a brand new street project and then water comes in a year behind and then puts in a brand new water main and we have to cut up a brand new street. So we do try to look at those projects and get those on a timeline that makes sense. Well, one of those projects this year we just mentioned is the Lincoln and 33rd Street project around the school. Right now, there's only a 10-inch water main that runs along Lincoln Street. So we know that we want to make a loop out there with the water system just for fire protection and water service and redundancy. So we know that we want to put a water main in south along 33rd. Well, again, instead of waiting until the street project is done and then coming in, we've decided to move that project up. So this year, we're going to put in a 12-inch water main on the west side of 33rd south, and right now probably terminate it at the end of where the street project is at because there could be a lot of changes that happen maybe someday with a new middle school and how that roadway will connect and all that. So we're going to wait until that's a little bit more solidified before we extend it all the way down. But
The original plan was to go to 136, though, in
Yes.
the area, but just for now, hold off. On
yeah,
that. Yeah. So-
because there could be a lot of changes, like I said, and we don't want to spend the money now and then have to relay a different water main here in 5 years. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So.
On the electric side, anything? I know Pat's done. They're doing substation reconstruction. They're upgrading transmission lines, things like that.
Yeah, I tell you the honest truth, I'm hands off when it comes to electricity. I'll be truthful. Pat's guys do a great job, but our engineering department, our main focus is streets, stormwater, water, and wastewater.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Speaking of wastewater, you're also the superintendent out at the wastewater treatment plant. One of the things that was discussed recently was the back-to-back snowstorms we had in January. We got down to a situation where, and I didn't really realize this about how that affects wastewater plant operations. Explain that a little bit.
So, one of the things that we utilize, the City of Beatrice does for treatment of our wastewater is a trickling filter. Mm-hmm. And basically it is what it sounds like. We have plastic media, and there's these huge arms that rotate above this plastic media and uniformly spread the water over the top of this media. And in essence, that's where the biological activity takes place, is on this plastic media. It removes the BOD and TSS out of the wastewater stream. Mm-hmm. Well, it's open to the air. Mm-hmm. So that biological activity really is affected by temperatures. So anything below 50 degrees, that biological activity really starts to be reduced. Mm-hmm. Well, 50 degrees down to minus 30 degrees is a big change. So we have a permit out there with our wastewater plant that says, hey, here's what you have to hit in terms of the wastewater that's leaving your plant into the stream has to meet these parameters. Mm-hmm. And so when biological activity goes down and we can't treat that well, then we got to be really careful.
So they don't set a new standard for when you face that weather situation.
No, there is for different seasons.
Okay.
So in the summertime, yes, our ammonia is one of the big things, our ammonia limit. And our ammonia limit is a lot lower in the summer than it is the winter. But minus 30-degree weather in an open air where water is, it's really hard to get down to our permit. But we were able to meet our permit in this month of December and January, even with the cold temperatures. So thankful for that. We won't have to write a letter to the state and say that we were out of permit. So
were you able to meet that standard based on some of the other innovations or improvements you made at the plant? Was that it?
Yeah. Right now, what we're doing to help with that, we have basically huge exhaust fans that are pulling heat from one of the enclosed buildings and pumping it through that trickling filter, and that hot air is going up through there, trying to keep that bioactivity warm enough. But it's still a task to do in the middle of the winter at minus 30. But we've been lucky this year and been able to maintain our treatment capacity.
Didn't have to shut down the plant for any hours or anything like that?
Nope. The guys have been doing a great job on maintenance out there.
Okay. One of the things I know that cities are charged with doing now is stormwater management, and it seems like the rules have changed quite a bit, and they come from higher above down to you, and you have to meet them. What's been maybe the most difficult thing about that, just kind of complying with new rules in that area?
Well, like with any program, it takes manpower to be able to monitor that program, to and then also dollars, and stormwater is part of the street department. Well, street department's not rate driven. They're only allocated so many dollars based off the lane miles, and so that's probably the most difficult thing. I always tell everybody we are probably one of the smallest cities categorized with the large cities and what they have to do, and that cutoff is 10,000 people. So when Beatrice is 12,500. We're just right over that line, and we're expected to do the same thing that Grand Island, Kearney, Lincoln, Omaha, and all of them do. Well, they have staff that's all they do. So that's probably the biggest hurdle that we have with our stormwater program.
So how do you fund that? Do you have to do it through a user fee or something on a utility bill, or long range? I mean, what?
We have not done that. There are some communities that have done that. They've created a user fee, a one-time fee per year. We're not looking at it hard, but it is one thing that we're considering. But right now, we're not to that point. We're hoping to keep it underneath the street department and keep functioning the way we are. We just got done submitting, or submitting the information for our annual report every year. We have to submit what did we do for our stormwater program this year, and are we meeting that permit to implement those things? And there's 6 categories that we have to meet, and I'd bore everybody if I went through those 6 categories. But those 6 categories, we have to show that we're doing certain things and meeting that permit. And one's like public education and outreach. What are we doing to inform the public about stormwater? And things like that are all part of that permit.
And you're probably having to do it with 5% of the staff, like a city the size of Omaha would to be able to do it. So.
The famous quote in the city of Beatrice is "duties as assigned." So we, Barry is my surveyor, but he gets pulled into a lot of stormwater activities, doing construction site inspections on stormwater. We have to go out and inspect our outfalls or the flared in sections or where the water comes out into the river. We have to go out and inspect those every year. So, it's ever changing, and it's a task to try to get it done.
I look back to, I came here in 1980, and I was trying to think about, you talk about the growth of a community as far as developments and how different things look today than they did that long ago. I think the one that kind of stands out for me the most is, say, like the Flowing Springs area. Wasn't even there. It wasn't even a development at that time. And now you look at it, with that comes a lot of runoff from hard surfaced areas. So you've got studies going on right now, one east Beatrice, I think one in the Belvedere area.
Right.
I think there's one in the industrial park too, or there was maybe.
We had one done in the industrial park. The 2 that you're referring to now, we call Trib 44. It's basically the drainage way that goes through Hannibal Park and then down south, down eventually through Flowing Springs. That's one. The other one is the Belvedere area, basically between, make sure I get my areas right here, between 3rd and 4th. And all the way from the south edge of Beatrice to the Big Blue River. It flows north, actually.
Kind of where that small canyon is, the backyards in that area.
Yeah, too, and so some people have voiced some opinions about, some of the problems that they're seeing in those areas, which is coupled with, like you just said, more development, more roofs, more concrete, and there's created some issues in those areas. So we have the city of Beatrice sent out an RFP, a request for proposals from some engineering firms to look at those 2. JEO was selected on that. And so we just kicked off that project with them. They're starting to evaluate those areas and seeing, basically with the city of Beatrice, we want to know what can we do to help. Well, it's kind of hard to budget for those when you have no idea what needs to be done there. So that's what we hope that these 2 studies will do, is they'll be evaluated saying, okay, here's what you need to do to help relieve some of these concerns or flooding issues or whatever issues you're having in those areas. And then maybe we can establish, okay, here's the dollars associated with it, how are you going to pay for it? And then moving forward, maybe help relieve some of those.
One of the things or possible options we've heard about lately is the use of retention ponds in areas. Where's the possibility of where people could start seeing something like that in a practical application to kind of hold water and then just release it slowly into the system?
Right. So one of the biggest ones that people probably forget that's there is actually at Beatrice Hospital. Out in front there, that's a large retention cell that was put in a long time ago, honestly. But some of the newer projects, one is the city of Beatrice's own Standing Bear Trail, the trailhead down there at 5th and Perkins. We put in a concrete parking lot to catch that because we didn't want to overwhelm the storm sewer. There's in essence a stormwater detention there. Now there's 2 parts to stormwater detention that we haven't talked about. One is basically the quantity of water is a big part, but the other is now they're starting to put on us is the quality of that water. So when you get into big enough ones, you got to look at that as well as, okay, now we want to clean the water as well. And so you're getting into a whole mess of things. But some of the other detention ponds that you were asking about is the new gas station along the highway and Scott Street. As we know, Flowing Springs has some drainage issues. So we didn't want to compound that. There's a lot of concrete out there with that gas station. So there is a detention pond right on the west edge of that to control the amount of runoff that's going down that drainage ditch, which ultimately affects Flowing Springs.
In some instances with a retention area, is there a potential for a recreational benefit, kind of depending on how much area it handles or the amount of space you have to put one in?
Sure. Yes, I always tell everybody they don't have to be these dry hole in the grounds and ugly looking things, and that's what we were trying to do with Standing Bear Trail. If you go out there, it's mulch, it has flowers in it and things like that. So they can be used as a way to beautify an area as well. Now, there's several different ways of doing this too. They don't have to be just holes in the ground. They can be even underground bins that are underneath parking lots. So
I see.
everything has a dollar associated with it. That's probably the biggest impact that we're seeing. Developing, they have to count on those costs, which ultimately is not what they want to do. They want to put that money into their buildings or their site, not having to put this stormwater detention cell there. Okay. So.
Okay. Back to wrap up, Ask the Mayor with Beatrice City Engineer James Burroughs in just a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor, just a few minutes left with City Engineer James Burroughs today. Kind of lumped these together, the Court Street Corridor Project and Lincoln Corridor. A little bit just kind of waiting on things, or what's the situation there?
Well, especially with Lincoln Street. I mean, yeah, we have a plan with that, and we kind of have some costs associated with that. But like everything else, it takes money. And, right now we felt like it was better to concentrate on the traffic issues out by the school, making sure that that's a safe corridor for the kids and parents. So that's going to be our main focus probably over the next couple of years is that project versus Lincoln Street. Doesn't mean that we don't want to do Lincoln Street and it won't happen. It's just, like I said, we got to find the money to do that.
And the situation on Court Street?
Well, Court Street right now, a lot of that's been done through the studies and looking again, dollars is the big driving factor on that. And it's by no means, we're looking at different grants and things that we can do to still push those projects forward. Right now, though, in lieu of doing a big project downtown, we are designing right now Ellis Street from 2nd to 3rd. And we're going to try to incorporate some of those ideas that we've been talking about for that downtown. We're looking at some angled parking, trying to increase that. Maybe some bump outs of the radiuses or at the intersections for pedestrian safety from walking from one side of the street to the other, minimizing that distance. Adding maybe some planters, adding, some stormwater little catch basins on the side where there's mulch and flowers and things like that. So that might be our first attempt here to say, okay, this is kind of what we're thinking, everybody, and maybe using that as a kickoff point for people to look at it and tell us what they like, what they don't like, and then that maybe can be rolled over to in the future what we do on Court Street and Market or whatever.
That short block there is two-way traffic now.
It is.
Would it stay that way, or is there some thought of taking that in a different direction?
Yeah, so that's kind of why we chose that versus kind of continuing up the hill there with the one-way traffic, because with two-way, we can still keep it two-way traffic, and that just lends itself to the parking that we just discussed, like have angle parking on the north side and parallel parking on the south side, and then we're not affecting the truck route as well. We can kind of get traffic to pull over or to merge where the two lanes will be, but not affecting those one lanes on 7th on 3rd and Ellis Street.
Just a couple of quick things here. Requests for proposals on the old school sites, elementary school sites. You're getting them.
Yep, we received, I believe, 5, and so we're currently reviewing those proposals, and we'll sit down and make a decision on those. And that's just going to help us as the city determine what's the best thing to do with those sites moving forward to, keep the town growing the way we want it to.
And usually in the first half of the year, there's armor coating projects too. You have some planned?
Right. We have some asphalt sealing and some and armor coating projects. Right now we have around $70,000 budgeted for armor coating projects for this year in 2024, and we have about $75,000 budgeted for asphalt sealing. So you'll see a lot of that work being done. And that basically what those projects are is just trying to keep our streets that are in decent shape and not letting them deteriorate any faster than we can.
Do you pick that by section of city at a time, or is it just kind of random, or what's the deal?
We were doing section at a time, but right now we've covered enough sections that now we're backfilling, and it's based on Jason Moore, the street superintendent, what he feels out there needs to be done. We also look at just future projects and what we need to get cleaned up, but there's still a rating system that we use on those streets, and whichever one kind of pops up to us the most and needs the attention, then that's what we're hitting.
Stay tuned for the schedule on that then.
Yes.
All right. James, thanks for being in today. I appreciate it.
You bet.